Welcome to our webinar today, and we're going to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and some of the options that are available to businesses throughout Wyoming. I want to thank you all for joining, and really wanted to kind of give a bit of a hat tip to the other folks, other organizations that have given webinars this week. I know that many of you have probably sat in on a few, and we really appreciate you digging into this, and we definitely appreciate those other organizations providing great information out to the businesses in Wyoming, as well as some of the other economic development groups and the the municipalities, chambers, folks like that. Really, at this time, I know information is very powerful. It can also be a little bit challenging because in some ways information is just about all we have. But we wanted to make sure that we met today, talked through some very key issues, as well as give businesses around Wyoming an opportunity to voice what they're feeling, what they're hearing, what they're needing, so that we can do our best to address those. One of the things that we do want to focus on are the businesses throughout the state, and we've got over 300 attendees so far, so I think that's a really great audience. And this will just be the first of more webinars that we will be providing so that people can have their voices heard and keep tabs on the ever-evolving information that's coming out of the federal government, the state government around COVID-19 and the responses there. So again, we really appreciate you all joining. We hope to hear from you toward the end of this, and I'll go ahead now and take a look at the agenda. So really the agenda for today is to take a quick look at the CARES Act. Specifically, what we're going to be looking at with the CARES Act are Sba Loan Options and the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. We'll talk a little bit about just business operations in general, and then we will jump into what you've probably all been waiting for, the private business Q&A session. We'll talk more about that, but I'm really hoping that we can get an active and really an engaged group of people talking more about what's happening to them, as well as what they might have done to solve some of their own problems. And before we jump in real deep, I do want to say a few things about the CARES Act. I know that many people have poured through that and looked very closely at the details of what the CARES Act is, and we have found in our research that there's a lot going on in there. There are a lot of options, and there are a lot of ways that we can be helped to get through this time period. But we don't know a lot about how it's going to happen yet. And so we are not going to dig deep into that, because we just don't know how the mechanics are going to work, and we don't know how it's going to be applied. So what we're going to focus on today are two particular things that we do know how they're going to work. And many of you know about those, and those are those Sba loan options, both what's called the EIDL and the PPP. And then, of course, as employers, many of you, I'm sure, are concerned about the Families First, and allowing that to understand that better today is really what we want to focus in on, and then we'll open it back up. Again, appreciate your time today, and hope to make it very valuable to everyone. When it comes to the Sba loan options, we were able to bring in Amy Lee to handle the questions around that, as well as presenting some of the options to everyone so that everyone knows what's going on there. So we're going to transfer now the presentation over to Amy Lee so that she can walk through her information separately here. And so right now I'm going to go ahead and do that. Amy, we're going to get you switched over and allow you to present your screen.
All right, fantastic, Josh. Are you hearing me loud and clear?
We can hear you loud and clear. I think I'm going to make sure that we are able to, I think I might need to stop my share and then allow you to.
All right.
I have Warren and Ben on the back end here, probably. There you go. Excellent.
All right.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks. And are you seeing the Department of Treasury website right now?
We are. It looks great.
Fantastic. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I am truly grateful to all of you for taking time to join us today. The truth is that the task ahead of us is immense, and I'm not going to have all of the answers that you're hoping I have today. But I want you to know we're all in this together, and we're working through this as quickly as we can, and I'm here to share what I know. And what I don't know, we'll keep working through as quickly as we can. So just 1 week ago today, the CARES Act was passed. And one of the most incredible provisions in that piece of legislation is $349 billion that is going to enable the Paycheck Protection Program that is enabling that. It's live now. And this is to support small businesses. I'm going to start with this program because I think this is the program that provides the quickest assistance to all of you who need it right now. So we're going to take a quick look. This is the Department of Treasury website. If you go to their website, there's a COVID-19 banner on it. And this is really the information we've got about the program. We're holding nothing back from you. There's no more behind the scenes. What you see here is what we have and what has been sent out to lenders and borrowers. So we're all kind of working through it and figuring it out together. So if you're a borrower, this link here, I'm hopeful that you're seeing now the Paycheck Protection Program information sheet. If we're not, someone let me know. This is going to give an overview of what this program does. And what it does, what it's intended to do, is help small businesses cover payroll costs over 8 weeks. It's a very short-term program, and the intent is to cover payroll, mortgage interest, rent, and utility costs for an 8-week period of time. And the great thing about this program, this is a public-private partnership. This is how most of our loans work. And so the way these work are that you go to your local lender, to an SBA participating lender, and all of the financial institutions in the state, all of the banks, some of the credit unions, not all of the credit unions, right now are 7A lenders and are authorized to participate in the program. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But this is a guaranteed loan. SBA is guaranteeing 100% of the loan for the lenders, and you can apply virtually anywhere. Who can apply? All businesses that are small businesses, including nonprofits, certain veterans organizations, tribal concerns, and more. And the documentation that you need, I'm going to pull up the loan application form in just a moment, but I want to scroll down to this. So what can I use these loans for? Payroll costs, including benefits, interest on mortgage obligations, rent under lease agreements in force before February 15th, and utilities. And so there are some questions and answers in this document that are very helpful. How large can my loan be is probably your next question. They can be for up to 2 months of your average monthly payroll costs from the last year, plus an additional 25% of that amount, subject to a $10 million cap. And how much of your loan will be forgiven? This is a fantastic provision here. You will have the amount of money that you spend on the approved costs here, payroll, mortgage interest, rent, and utilities, forgiven. So what they are saying is that not more than 25% of the forgiven amount can be for non-payroll costs. The interest rate is 1%. The payments will be deferred for 6 months. Any balance that's not forgiven is going to be due over 2 years. You can pay that off sooner. There's no collateral and no personal guarantee required. Now, your lender is going to require you to certify that you're going to use these loans for the purposes outlined in the legislation and the regulations. You're going to need to certify. We're going to go to the application form momentarily, and I'll show you where you do that. That uncertainty makes it necessary for this loan to support your ongoing operations. The funds are going to be used to retain workers and maintain payroll. You have not and will not receive another loan under this program, so you can only get one, and that you're going to provide documentation and for the costs that you say you're going to spend it on before you get the loan, historical data, and then you're going to provide more documentation to your lender after you get the loan to show how you spent it. And it really is designed to be that easy. So I'm going to pull up the borrower application form. Let's take a look at that for a moment. It is a very short application form. You can see here, average monthly payroll times 2.5 plus EIDL. I'm going to talk about the EIDL momentarily. We'll get to that. That's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, our other program. I will get to that momentarily. And that's going to give you, the dollar amount of the loan you're eligible for. You're going to identify what it's going to be used for. One of the basic requirements for SBA lending is that borrowers are of good character. And so, if the applicant is presently disbarred or proposed for debarment, or if the business has defaulted or is currently delinquent on federal debt from SBA or another federal agency that's caused a loss to the government, that is going to be disqualifying as we understand it. If you or your 20% owners are in legal trouble, currently under indictment, etc., that's going to be a disqualifying situation for you right now. But this is a very much streamlined version of what a normal SBA loan application would be. This is what you got to certify to. You say that you've read everything in the form and you understand it, that you're eligible to receive a loan, and that you're either an independent contractor or self-employed individual or sole proprietor, or you employ no more than the greater of 500 employees, or for certain businesses, SBA has some size standards that allow you to have more than 500 employees. There's not a whole bunch of them, but some of them are relevant in Wyoming. And if you have questions, we can help you and your lender work through that. But generally, if your business has fewer than 500 employees, you're on track. And that you're going to use the proceeds for the purpose you say you're going to, and that you're not engaged in any illegal activity. And that any loan that you've received by the, that under this was for a purpose other than paying payroll costs. In other words, if you've already gotten an economic injury disaster loan from SBA, you can't use it for the same purpose as this loan. You can't obviously use two different funding sources to pay the same cost. And so this is where you're certifying, right? You're saying you understand all of these terms and conditions, and you're going to sign that. There are significant penalties for fraud, so don't commit fraud, right? A good practice under all times. So let's not do that here either. And there's additional instructions on the application form that kind of explain things a little bit more. I'm not going to go into all of those details right now, but as you can see, this form is available right here, final borrower application form on the Department of Treasury website. The regs that we and all of our lenders around the state received last night are here. This is the interim final rule that was published in the Federal Register. This is what it looks like. And so What I will say is, as you go to your lenders and let's say you start pulling together, what information should you take if you haven't been there already? I would encourage you to take either your annual IRS Form 944 or your 4 last IRS 941 reports, right? That's your payroll reports to the federal government documenting the payroll taxes you're paying as an employer, or your 1099 payroll expense for the last 12 months, IRS Form 1096. If you filed your 2019 business taxes, take that with you. If you haven't, take your balance sheet and profit and loss statement for 2019 and take your 2018 tax return. So what you want to do is just take the information with you to show your lender that, you know, yes, you do have payroll costs and this is how you plan to use it. And they'll use that documentation to calculate what loan amount you're eligible for. Okay, so that being said, your question might be, you know, looking at the world right now, we envision that it's possible that this could impact our business for more than 8 weeks. So this is great. This will help us get through, you know, the next 8 weeks and so forth, but I'm going to need more help after that. And so momentarily, I'm going to tell you about the economic injury disaster loan and how to access that. But the last thing I want to say about this, we're working very quickly and urgently with our lenders behind the scenes in Wyoming. Be patient with them. Some of them don't do a lot of SBA lending, and we understand that, right? Like if you can get a loan without an SBA guarantee, by all means, that's business as usual. That's what we want you to do. But if you need the guarantee, we want to be there. And so a lot of lenders don't use our programs every day. So they're having the same kind of issues that you might imagine if you've tried to get into, you know, a website or a system that you haven't accessed. Your password might not work. You might need to send an email to get it reset. And if the person who's sitting in DC and hitting the reset button for lenders across the country is getting that same request from 1,000 lenders, they're not all getting processed as quickly as we would like. So understand that your lenders are doing everything they can to get into our systems to do that, and we're working with them as quickly as possible. Okay, now I'd like to talk just for a moment about the economic injury disaster loan. This was made possible through the earlier economic stimulus passed by Congress, authorized SBA to use a program that's never been used to respond to a virus, our economic injury disaster loan program, for this purpose. And then Governor Gordon and the Wyoming Business Council and the SBDC did a fantastic job of working together very quickly to provide the needed documentation to SBA so that our administrator could grant Governor Gordon's request that these loans become available in every county in Wyoming. That happened incredibly quickly and was great work by a lot of folks to get that done. What does that mean for you? That brings online this program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program for Wyoming to you. And how is that different than this payroll Paycheck Protection Program? The EIDL, or Economic Injury Disaster Loan, is SBA's only direct loan program. We only do direct lending where you come to us specifically in disaster circumstances. And so this is one of those programs. These loans can provide up to $10 million and can help businesses pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that can't be paid but for the disaster's impact. The interest rate on these are 3.75 for small businesses, and they are 2.75 for nonprofits. Now, one of the great things about this program is that the repayment can go up to 30 years. The term is determined between the borrower and SBA, depending on need and payment ability. And the SBA administrator has deferred the first payment for a full year. As you, let's say, are able to get hopefully your Paycheck Protection Program loan in place first, that will buy you a little time to work through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan program. And the way that you do that is to go to this website, sba.gov/disaster. And you see right here, to apply for a COVID-19 Economic Injury Disaster Loan, click here. So let's click here and take a look at it, right? And so this is a streamlined process. I will say that when people first started logging into this portal, there were some hiccups. That is no surprise. More people than have ever tried to access the system accessed it all at once. Fortunately, the administration was able to streamline the process and reduce some of the requirements, and hopefully we're hearing make it easier to apply. Now, the expectation on the Paycheck Protection Program, because your lender is making that loan, is they should be able to disperse those loans very quickly. I won't use the word immediately that's been used out there in the media, but very quickly, same day in some circumstances, within a day or two. These loans are taking a little longer. We are hearing that people are putting an application in and they might hear that it's received, but they're not getting a decision right away. And that's, that's the process we're working through. Even in normal disaster circumstances, if there is a such thing as a normal disaster circumstance, these loans take SBA, they can take SBA 2 to 3 weeks to make a loan decision on, and dispersal takes a little longer than that. I'll tell you some good news on that momentarily, but just want to kind of give you a sense of what the eligibility for these loans are. You can kind of see that you can choose from amongst these to identify that maybe you're a business with not more than 500 employees. You have to check all of the following. I'm not involved in any illegal activity. No principal has more than a 60-day delinquency on child support. These are not available for agricultural enterprises. And you can see some of these other certifications. They're not in the business of lobbying. They're not a state government entity, can't be a member of Congress. And so then you see it will just direct you on to provide business information, business owner information, additional information, and summary. So it'll kind of walk you through it. It's going to ask you questions. What were your gross revenues for 12 months prior? And we're not going to go through every step in the form, but you can see that it's pretty standard information about your business. Now, if you have questions, who can help you? The Wyoming Small Business Development Center Network is an SBA resource partner, and we have provided training to them. They receive federal funding from the SBA, from us. They receive state funding from the Wyoming Business Council, and they're hosted by the University of Wyoming. So their employees are UW employees, and for free can provide you with free and confidential information on how to work through this process. They can help you pull together the information that's needed and figure out, okay, how do I know what my cost of goods sold for the 12 months prior was if I don't know that? Which line of my financial statement is telling me my gross revenues if I don't know that? They can help answer those questions. Now, I'm going to jump back here for just a moment because I want to tell you a little bit about what's being called the EIDL loan advance. What there will be in your loan application is a checkbox that will say, yes, I want to apply for the EIDL advance. What we understand is that this is a $10,000 amount that can be advanced to you. that has some components of being forgivable if you, it will not have to be repaid. Let's say you don't get your EIDL loan approved ultimately. It doesn't have to be repaid. Now, you saw earlier when we were in the Paycheck Protection Program application screen is that you had to disclose, had you already received some SBA assistance? And that's how this ties in here. You have to tell your lender, they're not going to be able to see it in their system if you've received some money from SBA already. So you've got to be pretty clear about that you can't receive 2 loans for the exact same purpose at the exact same time. But let's say that you were using the Paycheck Protection Program to pay payroll for the 8-week period of time, and you needed to borrow money for accounts payable, which is not an authorized forgivable use under Paycheck Protection Program, and you want to use an EIDL loan to pay for those costs. You can do that. And so we're learning more. I will not have every answer there for you on how all of the nitty-gritty behind the scenes is working on these. But this is what we know right now. And these are the sources that you can go to get absolutely good information. The SBA website at sba.gov/disaster, and then jumping back to the Department of Treasury website. And as we're learning more information, I am very fortunate to be part of the Business and Insurance Task Force that's been set up by Governor Gordon and being led by our State Auditor Racines. And so as one of the subcommittees on that, we're working very closely with our lenders, with the Bankers Association, and really with all of the stakeholders that we can, so we can provide good service and good information for all of you. And so with that, Josh, I'm going to wrap up my overview and let's take some questions, because I couldn't talk and chew gum. I couldn't get the questions in the chat as I was going. So maybe we can work through some of those.
Yeah, Amy, thank you very much for putting all of this together and presenting it. I know that there have been a number of questions, and when we first started this, we talked about maybe waiting until the end, but I think in the interest of, I think you had some time constraints, as well as go ahead and cover some of these questions that have come in about your particular topics. I think it might be really important for us to go ahead and jump in, if you don't mind, and have Warren, who's handling all of our production of this webinar, jump in and ask a few of the questions that have been chatted in. I know it's a topic that a lot of people are interested in. So Amy, if that's okay with you, I'll have Warren ask a few of the questions that have been chatted in.
That's great. And Josh, I will stay until the end, so I'll take a few now, and then if we need to move on, we can do that. I just couldn't see them in the chat as I was going.
Great. Thank you very much, Amy.
You bet.
A reminder to all attendees, please submit your questions using the Q&A tool. We will try to get to those as quickly as we possibly can. For those that we are unable to get to today, this webinar is being recorded, will be made available offline after the fact, and we will make a point to circle back on all of those questions. The first question we have comes from Shay Lundvall. It is my understanding that this is a first come, first serve basis. If so, how many are available?
Oh, that's such a good question. Thank you for that. That is our understanding as well. There's no specific number of loans that are available. The cap is the $349 billion allocation amount. The funds are not allocated per state, they're allocated nationally. There is some concern that these funds will be used quickly. However, when I was listening last night to the briefing at the White House, our Treasury Secretary acknowledged that they may be gone through, and he assured the American public that if they were, that Congress would work to add more funds to it. I do know that at the very highest levels of government, that's a concern, and that they're already working to mitigate that.
Our next question is, what were the forms and documentation you suggested to calculate your payroll? I got the IRS 944, IRS 1099, IRS 1096, and there was one more form that was mentioned. Can you please repeat it?
Yeah, so I think what I said is the IRS form 944, yes, which is your annual form, or your last 4 quarterly 941 reports if you don't have your annual form. Your 1096 is your 1099 payroll expense for the last 12 months. That's the IRS form. And your 2019 tax return. I would take that to your lender, and if you don't have a tax return, take your balance sheet for 2019 and your P&L. They may ask you for something else, but that's what I would encourage you right out of the gate to have ready to go and take there.
We have several questions on this topic. How do these apply to businesses with no employees, but who have other expenses and missed rents due to the forced shutdown?
So that's a good question. And sole proprietors are eligible to apply for, and I'm just pulling the regs right now, which I have in front of me. Sole proprietors are eligible to apply, and you can, document what you've paid yourself, and see, I'm pulling that out. Other expenses, though, beyond the payroll, the rent, the utilities, they would be costs that you would have to apply for an EIDL for. The Paycheck Protection Program is very specific in its uses. So if you have a lot of cash flow needs that aren't specific to payroll, then that's not the perfect program for you, and we'll be looking to the EIDL on that.
Do contractors or 1099 folks that I pay count under the Payroll Protection Program calculation for the total loan amount?
So that is a good question as well. And what I've seen in the regs on this says no, independent contractors have the ability to apply for a PPP loan on their own. So they do not count for the purposes of a PPP loan calculation for a borrower.
Okay, this one says, I applied Monday for the EIDL loan. I received a confirmation number on the application screen, but no email confirmation. Should I have received an email confirmation?
I don't know the answer to that. We're hearing that several people have had that experience. If you documented that number, I would hang on to it. We are hearing that that really the only way to get information is a very frustrating way, which is calling the 800 number on the website for disaster. And we're hearing that people can be waiting a really long time on hold on that. So what I could encourage you to do is to call either very early or very late. There is, I understand, 24-hour staffing. SBA has onboarded or is in the process of onboarding and detailing at least 500 employees from FEMA to help support that staffing need there. And there's also a higher tier help desk that's available. And so hang in there. We know that's a very unpleasant process right now to try to get information, but they're working through those just as quickly as they can.
We have another one that asks, how long are the loans available, and do agricultural employers qualify for the Payroll Protection Program?
Okay, so that may get into a little bit more detail than I can give you a good answer for. Honestly, we just, I'm not sure about agricultural employers. There may be, if you're a producer business, I don't believe so. I don't know that for a fact. We will be getting more clarity soon, I hope. we understand that the effective date of the legislation indicates that applications may be submitted through June 30th or until the funds are exhausted. So that's what I know about what the deadline is.
This question comes from Harley Stimmel. We are a seasonal business operating mainly in the summer. Will I be able to get a loan based upon last summer's payroll?
So that's a good question. And in the, there is some detail in the loan application form, especially guidance given to lenders on how to determine what a seasonal business does. However, the intent of this program is to provide payroll starting now for 8 weeks and businesses that are interrupted now. So let's say that you wouldn't ordinarily hire people until August for some kind of special summer activity or hunt guiding in the fall. That is not going to likely be something that will help you cover those costs that you wouldn't ordinarily incur until later. This is to cover costs between now and the next 8 weeks, if that makes sense.
Okay, this question, we are a small business that has been able to remain open during this difficult time. However, some of our employees have been forced to or have chosen to stay home because of caring for school-age children, being high-risk health, etc. Are we still eligible for the Paycheck Protection Program, and can we backdate paychecks for those employees who have not been at work for 2 weeks?
I don't know if you can backdate paychecks on this. I would suspect that you will have to document that the expense is incurred after the loan takes place, and for costs incurred in the 8 weeks following that. But if they are laid off, you absolutely can hire them back and pay them payroll during the period of coverage that you've applied for.
This question from Lisa Del Val. If I own a business and take an occasional draw for personal expenses, but I do not take a regular paycheck, how do I document that as pay for this loan?
That's a good question. Some of those kind of specifics may need to be looked at between you and your lender on a case-by-case basis, and we may not, I don't know right now, but we're working on getting answers to some of those.
Another one, the Payroll Protection Program. What all goes to payroll cost? Are federal payroll taxes such as unemployment, Medicare, Social Security included or excluded? What about Wyoming unemployment and workers' comp? And what about wages paid to non-immigrant workers such as J-1 and H-2B holders?
Okay, this is a really great time for me to say that I'm not an accountant and I don't play one on TV. But what I can tell you is what the regulations say. If you open that document, they do have some additional information on exactly what counts as payroll costs. So I'm going to read to you what the regs say on that right now. On page 10 of the regs, what qualifies as payroll costs? Payroll costs consist of compensation to employees whose principal place of residence is the United States, in the form of salary, wages, commissions, or similar compensation, cash tips, or the equivalent based on employer records of past tips, or in the absence of such records, a reasonable good faith employer estimate of such tips, payment for vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave, allowance for separation or dismissal, payment of the provision of employee benefits consisting of group health care coverage, including insurance premiums and retirement, payment of state and local taxes assessed on compensation of employees, and for an independent contractor or sole proprietor, wages, commissions, income, or net earnings from self-employment or similar compensation. So some of this, like I say, some of these detailed questions are spelled out in a little bit greater detail in the regulations.
Amy, really, really good answers to those, and we sure appreciate it. Warren, thank you for asking them. I do want to say we weren't able to ask all of the questions that came in. So it's possible that you have put a question in that we were unable to answer in this format. However, we will be going through these and do our best to answer them or get you the information that will answer your question. So again, we really appreciate you taking the time to put those in. We will go back to Amy later in the presentation as well during the general question and answer if you do have questions there. And so we'll jump back over to the other portion of our talk a little bit here. So hold on just a moment while we jump in and we can take a look now at the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And for this, we have Elizabeth Gagan, who is our new Deputy Director of the Wyoming Workforce Services. So let's welcome her as we talk through this. And as we do, again, please feel free to chat in questions as we go. And we just have some brief things after this point, and then we'll open it up to more and more questions. But great questions so far, excellent participation. We really appreciate all of you spending time, and hopefully that it's very helpful to you. Liz, are you able to join in? And if you just ask me to advance the slides, I will be happy to do so.
I am here, Josh. So you can go ahead and advance to the first slide. Okay, so very generally, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act provides extended FMLA benefits as well as paid sick leave for the following specified COVID-19 reasons. The employee is subject to a federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order related to COVID-19, or is caring for someone who is subject to such order. A healthcare provider has advised the employee or someone in the employee's care to self-quarantine. The employee is experiencing COVID-19 symptoms and is seeking a medical diagnosis, or the employee is caring for a child whose school or place of care is closed. Next slide, please. So as far as the employers who are required to comply with this act, it is any employer with fewer than 500 employees. There may be an exemption for a small business who has fewer than 50 employees to be exempt from providing the leave due to school closings or childcare unavailability. So it is going to apply to most employers in the state of Wyoming. Next slide, please. I'll go on. Generally speaking, covered employees must provide all employees with up to 2 weeks of paid sick leave at the employee's regular rate of pay. There is a maximum amount per day. And this is when the employee is unable to work because the employee is quarantined and or experiencing COVID-19 symptoms. Covered employees must provide 2 weeks or up to 80 hours of paid sick leave at 2/3 of the employee's regular rate of pay, up to a maximum of $200 a day when the employee is unable to work because of a bona fide need to care for someone who's been quarantined or to care for their children because of school closures. It is important to note that if the employee is able to telework, then they are not able to get this paid leave. It only applies for employees who are unable to telework in addition to not being able to work at their regular office setting. There are some additional benefits for employees who have been employed for at least 30 days. This is an additional 10 weeks of paid Family and Medical Leave Act, again at 2/3 the employee's regular rate of pay, where the employee is unable to work because of a bona fide need to care for a child because of school and daycare closures. For part-time employees, the leave is prorated based on the employee's normal work schedule. And next slide, please. Tax credits. Covered employees who are paying leave under this act are entitled to a tax credit in the amount of the salary as well as any health care coverage paid out due to this leave. There would be additional information about how to get those tax credits if you were to go to the Department of the Treasury website. And this is an important piece. Any employer who is covered by this act, meaning any employer with fewer than 500 employees, needs to provide notice to their employees of this act. This website that I've cited here is a copy of a Department of Labor approved notice. So employers are going to want to see that. And then no retaliation. Employers are not allowed to retaliate against any employee for taking any leave under this act or for filing any kind of complaint for taking leave under this act. And those are the kind of key components of the law. There are some helpful sites that I've listed here. The first is just a very general fact sheet for employers. The second are frequently asked questions that the Department of Labor has put together. And then the last one are the actual rules that the Department of Labor has put together. And this is kind of a very lengthy document. It includes some commentary from the Department of Labor about why they're doing what they're doing and how they've interpreted the law. And then the different code of federal regulations that the Department of Labor has put together. These are very helpful. They provide definitions for a lot of these different words that are used that may not, they're a little bit hard to interpret in this situation. So that is primarily the key components of this law. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Liz. And I know that we do have a couple questions that might be timely to ask right now. And so I'm going to have Warren ask those and see if we could go ahead and get a couple quick answers there. Thanks.
Thanks.
The first question we have is, should we be anticipating an expansion of the Wyoming layoff aversion grants? The grant applications were cut off roughly 5 hours after they opened.
That would be a question that would be better posed to the Department of Workforce Services. I don't have a good answer for you right now, but I can work on that and answer it later.
Another question, is there any discussion about waiving the rate increases for Wyoming unemployment taxes for layoffs made during this time period?
That is a question that we don't have a clear answer to right now, but we will look into it and get back to you.
If a normally full-time employee is teleworking, but only 10 hours per week due to obligations caring for his children, can he take advantage of emergency paid FMLA?
It is possible. There, if you were to look at the FAQs that I've cited to, there are one or two of them that deal with the working intermittently that will answer that question better than I can.
Do you know if state and local government entities are exempt from the payroll tax credits under the FFCRA?
I believe that they are not entitled to the payroll tax credits. And again, you could look to the Department of Treasury website for a better answer on that, but it's my understanding they are not entitled to the payroll tax credit.
That concludes the relevant questions we have for you, Liz, so far. As a reminder to all participants, if you have questions, please submit them using the Q&A tool. We are tracking those. If we're unable to get to all of them during the webinar, we will follow up after the fact, and we will make the webinar available on our website as soon as possible when it concludes today.
Great. Thanks, Warren. And thanks, Liz. You know, this is obviously a very pressing topic, and it's something that's very important for all of the employers and employees out there to fully understand. And, you know, I do want to say that the Department of Workforce Services has been very, very busy, as you can all imagine, and they're doing a great job. I know they're expanding the number of operators they have, a number of lines in, and doing their best to respond during a really challenging time. And so, you know, your patience with them is key, as well as, you know, making sure that these questions get answered, because we still want to answer them. And we'll talk more about how to ask those questions and make sure that we are aware of them toward the end here. But, you know, Liz, we really appreciate the work you and your agency is doing, and we know that it's a really challenging time. And so thank you very much for that. You know, one of the things that can happen during a crisis like this is that we can just sort of get so wrapped up in everything that's going on and the idea of survival. And you have to. I totally understand that, and we definitely want to do that. But I do want to remind everyone that even though there are a lot of things going on at the federal level, there are a lot of things going on at the state level, just remember that there are also things that you've got to pay attention to at your business level. And so making sure that you're continuing to talk with bankers and other business folks about your options. I think earlier today we talked a little bit about the SBDC, and that group is a fantastic resource for helping you with many of your business questions on a general level, as well as specific during this crisis, but definitely can help you with a number of ways to make sure that your business thrives and survives there. So reaching out, and I believe in the chat box, and we can provide this later as well, there was a link to Wyoming SBDC.com, I believe it is. And so making sure that you check that out is important because there are local resources that can help you there. You know, as we talked about paying close attention to your own business, make sure that you realize that there are other requirements that you might have and that your employees might experience because of their varying work hours and things like that. So I know one thing that came up was insurance requirements, and making sure that people had enough hours to maintain their insurance. Just be thinking about that. Again, with the employment agreements that you might have in place, those still hold, and you need to make sure that you get legal advice there to make sure that you're doing the right thing with any employment agreements that you might have in place with your team. So make sure that we're kind of keeping an eye on the ball. It's a tough thing right now, but keeping an eye on the ball on your internal operations. And then, of course, working with your customers and vendors to find creative solutions. I know that, again, it's a challenge when you're scrambling day to day to make things work. But making sure that you're talking with your vendors, especially to understand what and your suppliers to understand what options you might have with them, and with your customers to see how you can solve, you know, kind of keep your business going while at the same time serving them. Really important to keep reaching out to them and talking with them. I think if for nothing else, for support as well. I also wanted to make sure that everyone knew about some of the websites that are available that are continually being updated to provide links to information that's pertinent, because as more and more information comes out, we're doing our best to vet that information, provide good, solid information that comes from a government source, and making sure that you have the right information. So take a look at the governor's website, which is covid19.wyo.gov. And the business portion of it is /business. That points to, in addition to a number of pieces of information, it points to the Wyoming Business Council website. And I would like to say, as I mentioned about understanding the questions that you have, we're going to take them today and do our best to answer them. But I also want to let you know that on wyomingbusiness.org/ payroll.gov/COVID-19, there is a web form where you can input a question or a comment or an idea into that form, and we will collect it in and then be able to better tailor information needs to you, be able to tailor the topics of our webinars in the future, and be able to respond to you and get you information that you need. In some ways, the information that we've already heard from businesses out in the state really kind of pushed us to make sure that the payroll protection and the employee unemployment challenges were addressed today in today's webinar. So that was a really good driver for it, because that's what we were hearing from this web form. So we want to make sure that you have those resources available to you and that we can help out as much as possible. Now with that, we're going to go ahead and open it up to questions. And while we've been handling some chatted questions, I'm going to turn things over to Warren, because he can provide a little bit more logistics about how we want to do that. But I want everyone to think in terms of these three categories when you're asking your questions, if you can. Thinking about your immediate needs and concerns is obviously very important, because the thing that's right in front of us is so important. But I also want everyone to start to think about what is a 1 week down the road, 2 weeks down the road, 1 month down the road look like, and what concerns are you going to have so that we can get in front of them as soon as possible. And then of course, we do want to share some best practices and creative solutions, because sometimes with a group as big, we've had almost 400 people on this webinar and now about 300. With a group this big, sometimes you can find solutions from your peers. And so, don't feel afraid to share those and help out the folks around the state. So with that, I'll turn it over to Warren. Thanks.
All right, participants, we will allow you to ask your questions. Please use the Raise Your Hand tool within the webinar. We will get to questions in turn. Priority will be given to those participants who are individual businesses. We will, if there is time allows, we will allow associations and trade groups to chime in. Please make sure that you've got any background noise muted so we don't pick up interference. We'll take our first question now from Mr. Jacob Hunke. Jacob, you are live. Please ask your question.
Shutdown, and if you're considered a necessary business, what happens? Does your staff are they allowed to come back in, come and go from the business?
So that's a really great question. I can talk to you a little bit about what some employers are doing today, and that is making sure that they have those social distancing. They're working on social distancing. They're doing their best to keep common areas to less than 10 people and really work hard to do that. And I know that there has been some guidance for things like grocery stores and some of those essential services already put out by the Department of Health. But I would guess in that event that we will be putting out some guidance for employers that need to handle that.
We have another question, raised hand from Audrey Hagan. Audrey, you are alive. Please ask your question.
We have 2 single-person LLCs, so small business, and I've been reading about lost wages for non-W-2 employees, which that's what we are. And I'm looking at either unemployment or the Payment Protection Act loan, and I'm just wondering if you guys have input. It doesn't seem like one person would be able to apply for both.
Liz, that one might be better for you to jump in on.
As far as the UI claims for self-employed people, I don't know how that claim would interact with the SBA loans that we've been talking about. But of course, certainly, no one's supposed to be double dipping, but I don't know what the mechanism is for sort of looking at that.
Liz, let me jump in on this with my best guess on this is that for the funds expended under the Paycheck Protection Program, you are going to have to document that you paid the person during that period of time, and you as the business owner are certifying to that. And so it would stand to reason that if you're paying someone, they're not also claiming unemployment for those same days, those same exact times. So I think that's going to be on you to make sure that you're, if you're claiming unemployment, that's one thing, but if you're actually claiming under the Paycheck Protection Program that you're paying somebody, I don't see a way that you can do both. Does that make sense?
Yes, I wasn't the way I framed it maybe sounds like I was thinking you could do both, but I guess, is there a way to compare which one is better for our business? Because it looks like the federal government would be chipping in up to $600 per week along with the unemployment benefit. So I know that the loans are open today. I'm just trying to figure out if there's a financial way to see which one would work out best for us.
I gotcha. I'm now hearing what you're saying. We're certainly not in a position at SBA to recommend one way or the other. What I would say is maybe that's a good question for either, the person who does your accounting. Maybe they can help you run those scenarios for your specific business, or maybe talking with an SBDC advisor could help you run some scenarios for your business, and then make whatever decision seems to be best for your employees. I do know that for employers who pay insurance and other things like that, there may be some real benefits to their employees in maintaining them on payroll and continuing to cover those costs so that their employees remain insured in that manner. And so all of those specific things to an individual situation are going to come into play. And it's a great question, one that I know a lot of employers are going to be wrestling with.
As a reminder, anyone on the line wishing to ask a question live, please use the raise your hands tool. We will get to you as we can. We'll take a question from the pool. We have been told that an employee must use their own sick or vacation time for their 80 hours, not COVID sick time, before they may use the COVID FMLA to care for a child at home.
Hi, this is Liz. I actually just typed a response to that in the chapter of the Zoom webinar and referred people to the specific part of the CFR that discusses that.
Another question from the line. Do I understand correctly that if we receive both the EIDL and the PPP loans, then can we use both of the loans as long as the EIDL is used for accounts payable and the PPP is only used for payroll? Will the SBA deduct any EIDL funds from the PPP loan?
So that is a very good question. How I believe that this is going to work is that any amount that you might receive for the EIDL advance would be rolled into your PPP loan. What it says in the regs on this is when you're calculating the maximum amount you can borrow under the PPP, it does have a step in there that says add the outstanding amount of an economic injury disaster loan made between January 31st and April 3rd, less the amount of any advance under an EIDL advance loan, an EIDL COVID-19 loan, because that part does not have to be repaid. So in the regs there are some, for instances, about how that all works. And what I would say is if you have applied for an EIDL loan, make sure to let your lender know about that and what you've applied for, and if you've received any funds as you're applying for a PPP loan, so that they can help you work through that. Let me just answer a couple other things, Josh, if you'll indulge me for a moment while I have the mic. One of the questions that I answered earlier, I want to just retract a little bit on the agricultural employers. Agricultural businesses under the EIDL loan, producers are not an eligible applicant under the EIDL. But under the PPP loan, one of the things that we're seeing and starting to learn more about, but don't have all the information on, is that any farm credit system institution other than the Federal Agricultural Mortgage Corporation is going to be able to make some of these loans here. So I think that's something that we need to kind of stay tuned on and get more clarity on. So there may be more ability on agricultural employers under the PPP that I'm aware of that are not available under the EIDL. Another question I had seen in there was, have I screwed up or do I have to reapply if I have already applied for the EIDL and I decide this PPP loan is a better deal? No, you have not. If you apply for an economic injury disaster loan and you did it before about Monday on this week when the website was a little bit on the fritz, they are requiring you to reapply if you want to be eligible for the EIDL advance. The only bright spot of that is what we're hearing is that because the process was significantly streamlined after Monday, that reapplication goes much quicker and you don't lose your place in the queue for reapplying due to adding a desire to take the EIDL advance component of that. Also, you can apply for an EIDL and then decline the offer from SBA if you learn that no, in the interim after I applied for an EIDL, I got this Paycheck Protection Program loan and now I don't need the EIDL. No harm, no foul there. But what I would say is before you sign loan documents on both loans, have a clear picture in mind of what financing tools you plan to use and let's try to get some clarity from your lender or from the loan servicing staff at the SBA EIDL department in our disaster assistance center. Make sure to answer those questions before you sign your loan docs. Sorry for jumping in, Josh, with those 2 additional points.
No, that's great. Thank you.
We have a hand raised from Rosalind Herring. Rosalind, you are live. Please ask your question. We'll come back to that question. We have another one from the question pool. What is the SBA's requirements for lawful permanent resident status?
I'm not going to quickly enough be able to find that in the regs here to answer that question. I apologize.
Like I said, it does its own thing.
Ms. Herring, you are live. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, this is her husband, Bob, and my question is, we are a small family business, 1 part-time 1099 employee, and we have that expense plus utilities, our heat, electricity, phone, etc. And with the basically not stay-at-home order, but to do not get out in a lot of traffic, trying to get people to come in for the business, how can we, is it the EIDL form or EIDL loan that we would go through to see about getting help to pay those bills?
So you have some options there. Now, let me say this, and I see this question kind of coming up between the lines here, right? About, you know, hey, I'm going to pay my employees, but they can't come into my business if I get a Paycheck Protection Program loan. You as the employer say what they need to do in that workday, right? And if there's not work that you can do, maybe you could, in some creative way, assign them online training that they could take that could better help your business down the road. Maybe this is a great time for, let's say you run a restaurant and there's a significant need in your community for people to receive delivery of meals provided by Meals on Wheels or other programs. Maybe you can say, okay, employees, your job for today is to volunteer over at Meals on Wheels and go deliver some meals for us. We're going to help our community that way. I see nothing that prohibits you as an employer from very flexibly deciding how your employees are going to use the time you're paying them for. That may not completely answer your question, and I apologize for that. I think that there's some possibilities that you could apply for either of those programs. And what I'd say is a great first place to start on these individual for instances is to either visit with your local SBDC regional director who can work virtually one-on-one with you, or talk to your local banker and lay out your scenario for them and say, what do you think?
Yeah, and to tag on to that, Amy, I think that the idea of your ideas about what you have your employees do is definitely a good one. And then reaching out to your SBDC rep. And just to clarify, I know that a gentleman posted the correct web address in the chat, but also just to clarify, that is wyomingsbdc.org. And you can find a whole bunch of information as well as reach out to a local rep there.
Another question from the pool. I am the owner of a small business and I am wondering what happens if we have applied for PPP and then we have to lay off one of our employees after being approved. Does our eligibility change?
So that's a great question. There is a safe harbor in the regulations for that, and I'm trying to find that specifically. That allows you to rehire that person and put them back on payroll. And let's see if I can find that quickly enough to answer that. Go ahead and take another question and come back to me, and I'll see if I can find that portion.
If we have anyone on the line who would wish to ask a question live, please use the raise your hand feature. We will get to you as we can. We have another question that asks, are there options for businesses with more than 500 employees if the full-time equivalent is less than 500? Could we still apply?
So let me try on that one. So there are some Wyoming businesses for which the SBA size standards that are employee-based available at sba.gov/size. For those industries exceed 500 employees. For those limited situations, those businesses will be eligible. There's also, I believe, a carve out for some situations in the food industry that will allow 500 employees per location. But we'd have to look at that specific question on a case-by-case basis, looking at that business's NAICS code and situation.
We have a question on the line from Heath Van Eaton. Mr. Van Eaton, you are live. Please state your question. It looks like he is still on mute. We will take another question from the pool. Is the nonprofit cost line item of, go ahead, Mr. Van Eaton, you're live.
Very sorry about that. Okay. Hey, did one of you mention that if you applied at the very beginning of the week on the EIDL loan for the disaster relief, and I think one of your other people asked a question or chimed in on this, but I have not heard anything back either. And did the person just say that they advised to reapply because they were having maybe just like some issues on Monday with the system?
So let me clarify that. So if you were able to apply when the process first started, there was an online form and you would upload documentation That was the way that people were applying. If you applied through that process and your loan application went through and you got confirmation of that, then you should be okay. However, if the possibility of applying for an EIDL advance, which is a $10,000 component of that, basically a grant, a forgivable loan component that doesn't have to be paid, that was not part of that original application. So if you didn't do an application that basically let you check a box whether or not you wanted to apply for EIDL advance, then yes, you should reapply because you applied. I mean, kudos to you for getting in early and doing that, but this other provision came online, and that's the way that you can avail yourself of that.
I got a question on the line from a Rick Young. My wife and I own 2 mountaintop resorts in the Bighorn Mountains. We employ an average of 40. All employees are required to live on site. We provide room and board plus salary. Can this cost be used in the PPP package? We have laid off no one at this time, so are feeding and housing them now.
So I think that I don't know the specific way that question would be interpreted. Certainly the salary, but I don't know about the cost for housing those employees specifically. So what I would say is, because you have to apply for these loans working through your lender, reach out to them. They'll look at your documentation and they'll try to figure it out behind the scenes working with SBA. That's kind of how we're working through some of those.
We have a question on the phone from Alex Lee. Alex, you are live. Please go ahead and state your question.
Yes, my question is if you have filed for the Paycheck Protection Program and have filled out the application form that was issued prior to this morning and submitted it to your bank, and your bank is not forwarding that loan application on, is it all right by the SBA if I was to go and find a different bank that is submitting those applications? Or is there a penalty for doing such?
So what I'm hearing you say is you went to one lender and they've told you for whatever reason they're not going to be able to submit it, and you want to go to another lender now. Is that correct?
Yes, as of 12/49 today, it was submitted, and they're saying there's confusion between them and the SBA. And as of now, I've been texting them. I have not received confirmation that they submitted my loan application.
Okay. So what could be going on there is it's very possible that your lender is working with us behind the scenes to try to make sure they have access to submit those loan applications. And it may well be that as soon as we can get them access, they intend to submit it. So I would find that out from your lender, what their intention is. And if whatever that answer is unsatisfactory to you, I would withdraw my application at that lender before I submitted another application to another lender, because you are certifying that you have only applied for one Paycheck Protection Program loan. So it really would be a problem if you put in 2 applications on the same day at 2 different lenders. So you've got to have clear communication if you're going to withdraw an application from one lender and try to go to another. I would just say, though, that I understand the urgency of all this, but taking a loan application off of one lender's plate to try to go to another may not result in your loan get made any more quickly, because all of the lenders are working through these situations right now. So just be clear. I'd give them a chance. I'd give them more than a day to get through our systems, because it's very likely not their fault. It's likely ours, and we're likely working very hard behind the scenes to make that possible.
We have another question from the pool. What is available to help self-employed without employees or contract employees? I'm getting questions from cosmetologists that have been ordered closed, for example.
Okay, so that is a good question. Let's see if I can find this quickly enough. Okay, so what it says, this is in the regs about sole proprietorships or independent contractors. You're eligible for a PPP loan if you are an individual who operates under a sole proprietorship. So that would be anybody who's filing a Schedule C or is an independent contractor or eligible self-employed individual. So you can apply. You're going to need to submit documentation such as necessary, such as any payroll tax filings, a 1099 miscellaneous, or possibly income and expenses from a sole prop. You're going to have to work with your lender on that. You're going to have to show probably some bank records. They may be able to work with you to document that, yes, you were paying yourself. This won't replace profit, so you have to find a way to kind of clearly delineate for that employer, for that lender, you know, okay, this was the component that I was drawing out of my business as my payroll equivalent. It does seem like there'll be more of these regulations and more clarification to come on some of these issues, but that's what I can see in these regs.
As a reminder to all of our participants, we've got about 8 minutes left on the webinar. If you have questions you would like to ask live, please use the raise your hand feature. For now, we will take a question from the pool. The PPP states 1 loan per applicant. Is the applicant the business or the individual? Can someone who owns multiple businesses apply for each business?
So that's also a very good question. Let me see if I can find where that is addressed in the regs. Let's see here.
And Amy, while you're looking that up, on a slightly separate topic, I know we've covered a lot of ground today, and we've got a lot of questions that have come in. We've had quite a few from the ag side of the world, and I just wanted to let everybody know that we are continuing to look into agriculture. We do have a number of great folks on a portion of the task force that are focused on agriculture, and we'll be able to perhaps bring out a webinar like this specifically targeted at ag because it is an important concern. I just wanted to kind of keep everybody posted that more and more of these webinars will come out as we understand the CARES Act better and exactly how it's going to be rolled out. You know, this is the first of many, and we really appreciate your attendance here.
So thank you, Josh. I did find in the regs on page 12, can I apply for more than 1 PPP loan? No. The administrator in consultation with the secretary determined that no eligible borrower may receive more than 1 PPP loan. This means if you apply for a PPP loan, you should consider applying for the maximum amount. While the Act does not expressly provide that each eligible borrower may only receive 1 loan, the administrator is determined, and then some language that only 1 borrower loan limitation is necessary to help ensure as many borrowers as possible obtain a PPP loan. So I understand the question that maybe if you've got 2 or more businesses, is the applicant the business or are you the applicant? We'll have to get more guidance on that, but it looks like the intent is that at least as an individual that you're only applying for 1. So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll have better information.
Amy, I'm going to make a best attempts to paraphrase this question, but would you speak to fraud alerts as far as the type of communications that will not be coming from the SBA? For example, you know, someone reaching out to an individual to apply or paying someone to complete the loan application for you. Would you be able to speak to that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So we at the SBA are not going to call you and ask you for information over the phone. We're not going to, certainly on the Paycheck Protection Program, the person who would be asking you for information on that is your lender. SBA is guaranteeing those loans to the lender. So the lender is our direct customer on those loans. We will not be contacting borrowers on those specific loans. So if you get a phone call saying, hey, I can do a Paycheck Protection Program loan for you, I would treat that very, very much as a red alert on those kind of things. And I would say that if you are interested in that, you should make the inquiry to your lender of choice. There is a list of SBA participating lenders on our website that's current, and that is at www.sba.gov/WY. I'll put that in the chat. You can, oops, sorry, Warren, I sent that to you instead. Maybe you could just retweet that to everybody. So, you know, that's not going to come from us. We're not going to ask you additional information. Now, in the disaster loan, the EIDL, you will receive probably email correspondence through that, but they'll have your loan number, they'll have all the information, and they'll be communicating from an @sba.gov email address. If you have questions, you can reach out to our district office and let us know if you've got a question about whether something's legit. We'll try to answer best as we can.
We have several questions on this topic. When calculating average monthly payroll for the number of employees used to calculate this number, what do you do if you have seasonal employees on payroll in 2019 records in addition to your regular part and full-time year-round employees? Do you use just the year-round employee number or the total number of employees, including those seasonal people in 2019?
Okay, so there are a couple examples in the regs on this, and I think that on a very specific question like that, what I do is refer you to those regulations on those for instances. But there are a couple of sample calculations in there.
Another one, being a single owner LLC construction company, is the total amount collected from invoices minus expenses such as materials, 1099 subcontractors considered my payroll?
So I think that that's a question you're going to need to work through with your lender. Sorry, you said total invoices minus cost of goods sold. Is that your payroll? Could you repeat that, Warren?
I'm getting back to that question in the queue. Hold on just a moment.
Sorry, I apologize.
While Warren finds that, Warren did make a good point, and I think that Amy answered it about the whole fraud thing. And I think right now is it's a key time to be on alert for other types of fraud, whether that be email phishing campaigns where someone is trying to email you a special offer, or someone is trying to put some bad things on your computer, or doing that via the phone. I think right now is a time where fraudsters will definitely prey on individuals and businesses to try to make things seem like they're going to help you out, but really take advantage of you. So I think right now is a very, very important time to have your guard up a bit and make sure that the people you're working with, you can talk with them one-on-one or know them and know them from a previous experience, or talk to them face-to-face, because the fraudsters are definitely going to be ramping up their efforts as well.
Amy, I did find the question. Being a single owner LLC construction company, is the total amount collected from invoices minus expenses considered my payroll?
You know, I think that's a really good question, and I probably can't give you a definitive. I think it would probably depend on which expenses are coming out of that, and what's left over, and how you would ordinarily you know, take those funds out. So I'd say work through that question with your lender. They're going to be able to help you make those calculations to the best of their abilities on that. I just want to ask for everyone's grace as I'm trying to answer these questions today, because I'm giving you my best guess and my gut feeling based on about 30 pages of regulations that I read for the first time last night. Ordinarily, we end up with, you know, policy guidance and very clear expectations on all of this, and a number of for instances in our SOPs to help us and our lenders work through this together. And the truth of the matter is we don't have a lot of the clarity yet that you're hoping we do have. And so today I've given you my best guess as to how I think these work. And what my commitment is to keep working with your lenders and working with you to try to answer those questions as we keep moving forward. And the collective wisdom of lenders and SBA working through this, I'm hoping is going to result in, you know, some FAQs that we can release in the coming days and greater clarity on some of this. Absent all of that clarity, what I can advise you to do is take the documentation you have and go sit down and work with your lender on that and say, okay, this is what we think the regs say. This is our best guess. In good faith, we believe this is the amount that's equivalent to 2.5 months of average payroll for our business. We certify that in good faith, this is how we've calculated it. And I think this is a time that we're really maybe not all going to have the certainty on everything, right, that we want. I mean, we may not have certainty of when things are going to get back to normal. We may not have 100% certainty, am I doing this loan application right? And so we're all just going to have to keep working together to try to come to those answers together. So your next step really on all these for instances is to take my best guess that I've given you today and go sit down with your lender, who's going to pull up the regs and the loan application form, and you guys are going to work through your best guess. You're going to certify to your best guess, and we're going to tell our lenders, we believe you, that you work together in good faith, and that we'll back this loan. I really think that's how it's working. So for what it's worth.
We want to thank everyone who submitted questions. We are getting right up to the end of our time, so we'll turn it over to Josh for some closing remarks. And for those who did submit questions that we were unable to answer today, we will do our best to respond to those questions. Those do log, and we will get back to you on answers as quickly as we possibly can. We do appreciate your patience if some of those answers may be a little longer coming than others.
Yeah, thanks, Warren, and thank you for doing such a great job asking the questions and moderating that portion. I really want to thank Amy Lee of the SBA and Liz Gagan of Workforce Services for helping out today. As you can see, they have done a lot of work in a short amount of time to make things digestible and to make things happen, and we really appreciate it. And you know, I think at the end there, Amy, you were talking about uncertainty, and that's really a challenge for business owners, because business owners want to make decisions based on data, and right now we just don't have as much data as we all want to have. And while we can appreciate our need to make decisions based on good data, I think we also want to encourage everyone to continue to keep talking, continue to keep working for creative solutions, and continue to keep telling us what you need in order to do your work and to keep businesses alive in Wyoming. We definitely appreciate your time today. We appreciate your efforts in the past as well as moving forward through this. The uncertainty is unfortunate, but it is real. And so what I can say is we will continue to bring more and more information out to you. We will continue to listen to what you need and be able to deliver on that. And again, thank you for your time. Thank you for your efforts. And thank you for continuing to run businesses in Wyoming.